Disclaimer: the information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.
Mr. Keshe, can you speak?
I think he's just, but let's see, I won't speak for him.
It is about the escalation about this things happening. I don't know if you can add to the
You mean the
understanding
Ukrainian?
what they are doing. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, Jalal.
Hi, Mr. Keshe.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here just as an operator tonight.
Okay, you are the host. Yes.
What is the question?
What really happening? Are they you know, pulling the how much they can get, or something is there in the background?
There's a lot in the background. Part of it being the control over the fuel, gas fuel. If you are in Europe, you know we are facing with crisis with fuel. And as we've seen, the fuel prices in it gone up. Second is there is something which is not in public, but is a fact, which in the West is deliberately kept away from public to know, because then all the hullabaloo which has been sold to the West will become meaningless. What does this mean? We were told in 1990s that the Russian Empire, what we call what the USSR, was dissolved and was divided into 13 countries. Russian constitution as a USSR has never been revoked. And this is what in the West they don't tell us. What this means USSR as one nation still exists to today. And what Russia says is Ukraine is still part of USSR. And allies, NATO, whatever you call it, cannot enter this treaty, this structure. Russia has run in two levels in the background. One is the old USSR, and one is the new Russian satellite countries, is still part of USSR. And Russia is pushing with that agenda, and they don't tell us in the West. And Ukraine is part of USSR. And still on the territory of the Russian Empire. And it comes to a point that you can play as much as you like, but just because we let our children go, they don't become your property. And the West is muscling. And legally, Russia stands correct in defending the USSR. And this is the platform they are pushing with Ukraine. Just because you let the child go and you invested billions in his house, it doesn't mean this child can sell the house. And we will see a close rubbing of shoulders. And at this moment, Russia stands correct. And if Russia goes into Ukraine, is on the basis of USSR, which was never dissolved. The 13 satellite countries were 13 satellite countries united into USSR, United Russian Federation. And even today, many of the USSR satellite nations, presidents, prime ministers, in a very democratic way, are appointed by Moscow. And the European NATO base is muscling in a way to take the first child out of the package, and they won't let it. It's just trying to snatch a child when he's playing in the garden. And that's the bottom fact. And has risen a bigger pressure on NATO and on EU, because Turkey now, as part of the NATO, is backing the Russians. This is a huge game, because the naval forces of Russia has just passed through Istanbul, Bosphorus going up. They would not have been able to, they would have never, Turkey would never say no to Russia, but it's part of the game.
But I thought the Turkish assist Ukraine.
Turkey is got multiplicity of policies and foreign policy, and has been like this for centuries. Turks sleep with anybody in anywhere in the world, as long as it's the benefit of the Turkey. And this is how it is with the west, what they call east side and the west side of the Bosphorus. They can't play this game, the Europeans. Don't forget, Turkey will help Russia when it comes to the point, and would not go to bed with the West. Turkey has shown this many, many times. Turkey is part of NATO, but NATO did not support Turkey when it was needed. So Turkey has built a separate political military structure for itself in the Middle East that nobody can do. They go to bed with anybody they like. Doesn't matter what it suits them and who pays them in what part. And majority of the, what I call growth of the Silk Road Russian side, or satellite nations, are done through Turkey. Major investors are always Turks because they've always been in that route. They know the culture of all these nations. and are very influential with the Russians. One order by Moscow, all the Turks will be kicked out of all the satellite countries and billions of investment will go. As I said, the Turkish government is like the Iranian women. They push you away on the top of the table and underneath they pull you with the leg. And that will play that game. And Turkey will go with the Russian side if anything happens, because then it puts leverage on what Giscard said, the president of France. EU is a Catholic Christian union. No Islamic nation will be allowed in, and Turkey is trying very hard to get into EU by having actually part of EU as part of his land, or European continent as part of his land. There's a lot of political ways, and there's a lot of instability in Kurdistan to part of the Turkey, and Turkey is playing a lot of games with Israel. And this is a very, very complex situation. And we'll see. If the NATO goes, or if the Russians go into Ukraine, it's a territorial right of USSR. And they're 100% correct in protecting the land. Because USSR never went to all the 13 countries, what we call parliaments, to be dissolved. USSR has never been dissolved, and the heads of USSR are still heads of USSR. Brezhnev and the rest kept it this way. And the last USSR president never dissolved USSR. When the nations split off, they forgot to do it, or they deliberately didn't do it. Russia is protecting Ukraine as part of USSR. And they're 100% legally correct, because USSR belongs headquartered in Moscow, and Moscow has responsibility to all its satellite nations. Districts. Doesn't matter how the Americans and the Europeans try to play to get Ukraine in NATO, it cannot be done. Internationally, it's illegal. In a way, Europeans are creating the condition, not the Russians. This the same applies with Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Armenia, the what we call Turkish side of Azerbaijan within Russia. USSR was never dissolved. Just because you left home, you don't lose your family name and inheritance. And the NATO is trying to intrude. They think they can use it, and Vatican is pushing it. It's against international law. And Russia is 100% correct.
And all of the NATO knows about this. So why they
Of course, only public don't know. You got to realize, and I go back into this again, if some of you know, you don't know, I have worked in Kazakhstan and Russia extensively after the separation. And this always has been on discussion. Every time I met with the Russian leaders, politicians, they always said, if worst case, if China moves into Kazakhstan or they can move anywhere, USSR has never been dissolved. You will see Kazakh soldiers on the Ukraine territory. They'll come from all over to protect the motherland. If Russia moves into Poland and Czech Republic, yes, you can claim. Not Ukraine. Ukraine is part of the motherland, Russia. Still is, still on the same parliament, the same leadership, and they have their own parliaments, they have their own leadership. I have met with them many times. In different part, you have a USSR leadership and you have the national leadership. But they are put in the back of streets, nobody takes notice of them, but they are the most powerful groups in unifying and uniting the whole of Russia.
These
Are
big
you-
powers, sorry, these big powers did the same in ex-Yugoslavia and create their conflict and war and
This is the way
using
Vatican, this is the
religion.
way Vatican always has worked. This
Yeah.
is the, if you will see, like us, I've been in the world of politics and diplomacy for nearly 40 years. At the highest level, by coincidence and by birthrights, I was pulled into this. And I've seen many changes. You have international laws and you have other laws. This is why we can operate even in 5+1 in such a fine way. We know how the game is played and we know who we have to talk to and when we have to talk. And there is a possibility Russia will go into Ukraine, but it's not going to invade, it's going to protect, because NATO is pondering in there to put military inside and everything else. You cannot do, just because my girl goes playing outside in the field, you cannot batter her and rape her. And that's what the Russians talk about. It's the integrity, territorial rights of the USSR to protect the motherland. And that's what the Russia is talking about. They're not talking about invading and going in. They're talking about protecting the rights of the USSR. Americans should have pushed with dissolving USSR in 1990, 92. They didn't. And Gorbachev did nothing about it. He knew this will come. In my talk with the Russian diplomats many times, they said, don't wake up the lion. They don't, or in the West, don't wake up the lion.
But NATO is a defensive international organization.
NATO is
Even-
a pusher.
Yeah.
NATO essentially is the army of the Vatican. NATO, in essence, is military arm of the Vatican, including Turkey, but excluding Turkey from EU. EU very soon will pay very heavy for keeping Turkey out of the European Union. Very heavy. We see it coming up.
Ottoman Empire is in power.
It's always been.
Yeah.
25% of Iranians are Turks. Big chunk of German blood people today are Turks. Very large. A very large percentage of German children of today are the Turkish descendant blood.
Even in my family, I have my nephew is half Turk. Samuel Alperadi Güzel is his name. What to do?
Anything else, Jalal?
No, thank you, Mr. Keshe. The question here comes when they say enough is enough.
There is a high possibility that Russia will go into Ukraine. But we don't see a war. There'll be a lot of barking and shouting and howling. And by changing the central government of Ukraine, they will move back out after a few months. But they reinstated democracy, Russian democracy in Ukraine. You got to realize, during the USSR, Russia as a family has invested trillions and trillions in Ukraine. It's their assets. What they made as oil sales in the East, in Siberia, was invested in Ukraine. Ukraine does not have such a big national reserves or stocks. They build Ukraine to be what it is. And they won't let their investment go away.
And
And 90% of what we see is power politics and the newspapers, not what is fact on the table. And if you listen to all the requests of the Russia, it's that NATO to move away from Ukraine. As I said to a diplomat once, Ukraine is like a baby with the toe out of the blanket and the cat plays with the toe. And that cat is NATO. He's gonna get kicked by the baby very soon. The baby will pull its leg and the blanket after kicking. Is the territorial integrity of the USSR to keep USSR. And will win that. Because if Russia allows Ukraine go, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan will be claimed by Iran, 100%. Because they're fundamentally Iranian territory. Going back centuries.
And wouldn't this sort of cover the crimes of the last 2 years worldwide? Usually when presidents or leaders get in trouble, a war is a way to change the headline.
It won't be a war. We don't see a war. If it was a war, I'll go to Universal Council and ask for it.
Right.
Will not be a war. This is a tic-tac correction, and I don't see it. It'll be very, very, very. First of all, NATO has no power around Ukraine. We don't have a mass soldiers brought in. What did England do? Selling few helmets and things last week to Ukraine. And a few hand grenades. We don't see mass invasion of the European soldiers on the border. They don't have it. One of the worst things which Vatican did with EU was dissolving EU, taking the borders out, and literally dissolving the military of the most of the nations of Europe. There's no teeth into the barking. There won't be any high-level bombing as happened. You touch New York and Washington will be flattened within minutes by nuclear warheads by Russia. And China will join on the west, flatten the Los Angeles and the rest of it. The Americans and NATO know if they play, west and east coast of America will flatten to smithereens within minutes. This is not Yugoslavia. This is not Iraq. This is not Libya high-level bombing. You touch one single bomb, Russian will flatten New York. And the NATO knows, and the Americans know. And at that moment, China has already got a pack. They flattened the whole of Los Angeles in no time. This is just sparking. It won't be a war because we don't see soldiers on the borders. We don't have that kind of number of soldiers, and with Corona, nothing. How Russia has mastered 100,000 soldiers, they just move it to the front line of the European line, finished. You can bark as much, you can create sanctions. They put sanctions on China, on Russia, China will put sanctions on America. America will start within weeks.
But Mr. Cash, they're saying the new wars. It's not soldiers wars. It's drones and missiles and.
They can't, they won't, they will not. There is not. You can do a long-range bombing, but you cannot bomb Ukraine. Ukraine cannot be bombed. This is what you got to understand. If the Americans bomb Ukraine, Russians will flatten New York. They've told them in the background. Because, as Russian politicians very recently said, tooth for a tooth, eye for an eye. We don't see a war, we see a correction. And most probably there will be change of the leadership in Ukraine. The Ukrainian president will escape into the West or be imprisoned. A new government will be settled, new election in 2 years' time, and the next election, whoever comes, will be totally Russian elected. This is 99% possibility. It's not a war. They only can create sanctions and let the Russians, let the EU sanction American, sanction Russia. They close the gas pipeline. Half of the Europeans will die of hunger. All the gas pipes into Holland producing the food will go. All the greenhouses will go. Half of the factories are not there. And then what will happen?
But they have an alternative now, in a way.
No.
Qatar.
Pardon?
They have some sort of alternative. They are going to Qatar.
Qatar cannot meet the demand. Iran cannot meet the demand.
Such a huge demand, yeah.
The gas is committed to South Korea, Japan. When the West was trying to cause problems in the, what we call Gulf of Mexico with fuels and oils, the Chinese, the South Koreans, the, what do you call, Japanese took all the contracts of the gas. Trips are coming to Europe. And the new 400 billion investment in gas and oil by China in Iran will take 20 years to complete. We don't see a war. We see a conflict, what do you call, correction, but not a war. Russians can master 100, 200,000 soldiers into Ukraine. And if you look into the army, there are of the USSR soldiers inside. They're not purely Russian. They cannot touch one bomb into Ukraine. Russians have sworn they flatten New York. And the Chinese have a pact with Russia. China relies on 80% of its military technology, space technology on Russia. 80%.
Mr. Keshe, good evenings. Kay Carvels from London. Hi, God bless you. Just a quick reminder, if it is the truth, which I'm sure it is, because once you have also mentioned in 2017, April 2017, Russia has used plasma wind in order to totally shut down the aircraft carriers of Americans in Black Sea, where it got towed down by French to the French coast. And since then, there has been quite a few other incidents carried out by the Russian fighter jets, and just flying over in Alaska, and even when they were doing all sorts of tests on their missiles, as well as F-35 and a couple of other aircraft carriers that have all been totally disabled, and they've had all sorts of problems. So with this Russia that having this technology, why does NATO and America keeps on pushing and tickling them? I don't understand. I don't think even Russia needs to even send a bomb.
It's the Vatican. It's the Vatican which is pushing to take the Russian church.
At any cost.
At any cost.
Dumb.
I have worked in Russia extensively, Russian subcontinents, for a long time. Before breakup of the Russia or Eastern Bloc and after. I more or less for some time lived in Russia and in Kazakhstan. I was there more than I was in Europe. You know, when you go into the squares of Kazakhstan during the celebration in Almaty, you know what you hear dancing to? Persian Farsi music.
Yeah, and the West have been doing everything to kill the Persian, as well as the Saudi Arabians. They have been doing everything to take this.
Yeah, no, but we all have a common language. Kazakhs speaks Farsi. Uzbeks speaks Farsi. And we understand the culture, and we are very close. We've been very close to them. I still have offices in Kazakhstan and Moscow. Still running.
They should really all come under Iran's protection, all that 7 Caucasus states.
It won't happen. But principally, USSR, what Russia says about Ukraine is correct. Ukraine can be free, but cannot be part of NATO and cannot be influenced through Vatican. That's all it is. It won't be, it's not a war. The biggest thing American can do is sanction the private accounts of Putin in America. That's the most damaging thing they can do, more or less. It is in to go and get rid of the leader who is pro-NATO, pro-American, and instate their own, and within a few weeks they go back. And this will be done because Belarus is playing game as well. So it shows anybody out of the satellite nations wants to go off, they have to know what they pay with. And the West will pay for it very heavy. Russia will close overnight. We are still in the middle of winter. They have chosen their time to do this. They close the gas pipelines. They close 11 million barrels of oil export out of the Black Sea side. You pay $200–300 per barrel, and people will burn the woods on their houses to heat up. This is not a joke. It's well calculated, and it's in a way for Putin to show the last power of him before he leaves office. Putin leaves office very short. It's not going to be a war. We don't see it as a war. It'll be a, in a way, forcing Gushmali is, twinkling the ear of the Ukraine and the Americans do not play.
So, Keshe, would Iran be able to somehow, I mean, I'm not sure, perhaps not far-fetched, but would Iran be able, with with this advanced plasma technology, somehow mediate so that it wouldn't get to that far? I know it doesn't
No, it's
look.
nothing to do with Iran. It's nothing to do with Iran. This is a territorial, political, geopolitics. Nothing
the
to do with
peace.
anyone. The peace will be kept. There is no war. There's not going to be a war.
I don't feel that way either.
I don't see it. We don't see buildup of military in any borders. West will not, especially Poland, Czech Republic, and the rest make any move against Russia. They would not do. We don't see building of soldiers on the borders. How many soldiers are on the borders from the European side? A few thousand. When you want to go to war, you prepare. If you want a high-level bombing, you prepare. And Moscow has said, you touch Ukraine, one bomb, you flatten New York. And China is waiting to get into muscling with Americans. They'll take out the whole of the LA. Secondly, Americans don't have the forces, military forces and naval forces because of COVID to be in the waters. It's a dog without any teeth barking. Will not happen. Russia 90% will go in, that's for sure, in retaining the territory of USSR. The West can't do much. And they know they have no rights. We don't see massive movement of soldiers by Europeans or by NATO. The biggest damage they could do if you're looking for a war, the 5 biggest naval ships of Russia, Northern Fleet, would have not gone through Bosphorus in past 48 hours. I used to ship oil out of Bosphorus. I know the territory all the way from the Russian ports all the way to outside. Nobody plays with Russia in Bosphorus. The land, the water belongs to Turkey, but 100% controlled by Russians, because huge amount of their oil export goes through the strait. If they decide they'll change the regime in Turkey overnight to achieve their target.
I guess in a way it is a blessing in disguise that there is a balancing force such as Russia, at least for past 10, 15 years. Well, for the past 10 years, Russia has really upped the ante in the muscle in terms of military after he learned what has happened to Yugoslavia. One would have wished that at the time of Yugoslavia's war enforced war upon those poor nations, Russia was strong enough to stand against and for
that time. Russia didn't have a leadership.
No, it didn't.
Now they have a very strong leadership. They have come back together, and it's a very trimmed nation, very, very sophisticated nation. Russians are not the ones we knew in the past. The hippie time finished in 2000. Now you have very smart, extremely smart businessmen, politicians, military, and extremely, extremely educated, Western educated, controlling huge assets outside. It's not the time of what do you call 1990s. You're dealing with one of the most sophisticated nations, both with intellect and military and everything else. We'll see skirmishes, but don't see a war. And Americans will not play war with Russia because Russia has already strengthened their pact with Chinese. They squeeze America from both sides.
When Iran is part of the pact, they've just signed 20 years contract, not just economically, but mostly a military pact as well. As you've mentioned yourself, Iran has given some of the technology or trickled it down in terms of plasma technology to the Russians as they use this plasma wind successfully so much. So Iran is
but the
also
thing
part
is, we work on two levels in Keshe Foundation. We work on the front and we work in the background. And very soon you hear about the Keshe Foundation in Russia being established. And in a very big way, we move into Russia. They'll be in a matter of a few weeks, and we'll see the next steps. But I don't see we don't see a war, what we call it a war. There'll be a skirmish of power, a little barking, but in a way, Americans and NATO knows Russia is going in to claim their child, which is getting kidnapped. And you cannot be saying you're right if you already kidnapped or tried to kidnap a child. It won't happen. The only thing is the, what you call, the present regime in Ukraine will end up on exile, or they're already being paid by the Americans and Europeans, or they'll be taken into what you call long, 20, 30 years prisons. That will make them to rot, for an example. They won't kill any more Russians past the time of killing people when they went in. They put them in long-term prisons and make sure people always remember who's where. You will see when the Russians will go into Ukraine cities, they will be welcomed immensely by the true Russian public. They still speak Russian in Ukraine. Don't worry, personally, I don't see a war. But we see a conflict, which is verbal sanctions in Russia when they changed the leadership in Ukraine and sort out about 2,000-3,000 people who are behind this moving to US and NATO. They will take them back into Russia and put them in Siberian prisons for about till they die. We will not hear from them, and they'll be moving back out, appointing a new government, what they call a fake democracy election, and that's it.
just a shame to see nations pay heavily. Just ordinary people, they don't even have a clue what's going on. They pay with their loved ones and their blood.
We don't see any
killing.
killing. I don't see any killing in Ukraine.
well, Ukraine has had quite a lot of sacrifices. In 2014, when Palin, that American woman who spent $2 billion in order to create this Velvet Revolution, they already paid for it. All these fascists and Nazis got in there killing people in broad daylight.
We always had this. This is what they do. Don't forget now you have international structure which is heavily supported with nowhere called Wagner. Wagner now will take anybody out in Ukraine if the Russians send them in. Wagner Group have become a military force backed by Russia, but mercenaries.
Sorry, did you say Wagner?
Yeah. Read about them. They've become one of the most powerful military groups in the world. It's a private army, goes anywhere, delivers people to create mayhem when they go out. But the fundamentalists, it's been said, they're sitting in Moscow or in Russia as the head office. Any other question?
Mr. Keshe, this is Ed speaking. Same subject, but different tact, I guess. How long before the nations and governments of the world stop playing these games and start opening up to the peace?
Do you want me to give you an answer you will not like?
Yeah, sure.
How fast you knowledge seekers spread the knowledge.
Okay.
This is partially your responsibility. How fast you can share the knowledge and how fast you can bring the knowledge that you can do. As I said to John is here with us. The first 9 flight systems are completed in China, and after New Year we'll start delivering rapidly up to 20 units a month. Plus we have already placed the second 50 units to 100 units to be delivered by June, July. And we rapidly start deploying and delivering these units. And as I said to John, we'll put the pictures out. And John will receive a lion's share of the production coming off as the other parts. And we have expanded and extended the factory in Austria and other places to meet the demand of the delivery. And by delivering these new technologies rapidly, we will see changes. You will hear in the next few days international announcements in the next few weeks of the Keshe Foundation internationally in international media, recruiting scientists for development of the space technology. We're just about, if everything goes all right, to announce it. And we have already told the NASA scientists how much wages they'll be paid in joining. I'll read you a message to NASA, to the top people in NASA. We don't play games, and John knows, John is fully aware of it, what we are doing. This is the top officers of NASA, the people who will bring with them. If you decide to join us and bring in or set up a qualified team, we consider to offer 400K once a year payment in advance every year for 5 years. You can head the KF Arizona Flight to Spaceship Institute with a 500 initial investment budget, which is controlled by John. It reads, we are launching recruitment advertising directed at NASA employees in the next month, specialized in plasma flight. Basic salary 150 to 250K USD, depending on the expertise. Top scientists, NASA, it gets about $110,000, $115,000. We have already started recruiting it, and everything goes under control of John in Arizona.
What is the relationship with technology and aggressiveness?
With what?
Technology and aggressiveness. What is the
Sickness?
What is the relation between technology and aggressiveness of the government?
I don't understand.
If we bring the technology, how it will stop the aggressiveness?
Aggressiveness. We don't look
Yes.
at aggressiveness. We look at investing in bringing technology that doesn't matter how aggressive you want to be. There's no need for it. Doesn't work. You got to understand, Keshe Foundation has established a very solid team in the top management. Very solid. And we rely on this, that it creates a base for establishing a very solid international understanding of the technology and what is the application of it. In the next few hours, literally hours, Keshe Foundation will sign a very big bilateral contract with the Chinese government. Documents are getting prepared already. We play very slow, but as I said, the biggest enemy of the Keshe Foundation was kicked out of the Keshe Foundation a year and a half ago. The biggest, we never had such a big enemy inside. Now, everything was preempted, everything was stopped. Now it doesn't stop anymore. In Keshe Foundation, you will see, is not opening exhibition center in Linz and them calling personally, recorded, trying to destroy the Keshe Foundation to kick us out of the center. Keshe Foundation has gone totally different. We should have gone this way 10 years ago, but we didn't know. Everything we did was getting stopped on the day and then preempted. Now we have nobody to damage us internally. Our biggest enemy has moved out, or we kicked out. You will see very soon.
So, Mr. Keshe, back to the responsibility of the knowledge seekers. I don't see it as being just a physical activity of knowledge seekers trying to verbally teach or write letters or do all this kind of
No, it's past those days. It's now teaching the science and technology.
According to our understanding.
According to peaceful understanding, yeah.
Yeah, yes, of course.
Please run it. You will hear, I'm sure John will announce it in the coming time, very short time, the new changes in Arizona situation and the position of the new movement. We keep it very quiet, completely. We just put little, what I call teasers out to see what people move, who are the enemies and how they move. And this is what we call fishing. And then we complete our job.
Think that way. If some of your regular knowledge seeker, if they get touch with the technology, there will be any problem in the country
What do you
or
mean?
something?
What do you mean?
If somebody, regular knowledge seeker, if they find something little bit, so there would be any problem from the government or
What, for finding what?
It's like a technology, what you are teaching everybody.
Well, no,
Same
we're
thing.
encouraging. If you wanted, if you were scared of it, we wouldn't teach you. We are teaching you to find. And if you remember, I came here about 2 weeks ago, and we had a gentleman from Romania showing a video and making a huge claim. We immediately went through the Romanian Keshe Foundation and we asked for the proof of technology. What you show, 2 members of the Keshe Foundation, one of them is here with us, 2 of them could be, were appointed to see the technology, which was claimed and shown. And immediately we were told, sorry, the part is broken down and it's not working. And we understood the claim. And then what we saw immediately back in past few days in Romanian Keshe Foundation, another claim by somebody who thought, now I claim this, Keshe Foundation will come to me and pay me a fortune. But we know the gentleman, we know it's another fake. So if you find a technology, if you make it work for you to give you a better life, that's why Keshe Foundation is here. That's why we open our patent. If you discover something new, using our technology on its own or in conjunction with another technology, we are proud of it. We open our patent. We didn't put our patent there for people to go and sue them and say it's ours. How many legal actions Keshe Foundation has taken against all the Keshe Foundation knowledge seekers who are making millions of pounds a year, dollars a year as an income for themselves and their families. You do not know how much knowledge seekers are making with plasma technology. In China alone, we pass billions. In Brazil, many knowledge seekers by teaching and selling, it's the only income they have for their families. The same in Mexico. Many knowledge seekers in the Middle East, in Asia, sell little GANs equipments to their family, neighbors, and that's the only income they have.
I didn't make anything physically, but I experienced a little bit. I saw the spaceship. Actually, that is me.
Yeah, each one of us learns from technology and takes from technology what suits. When you have people who understand the technology and committed to it to make the change, you can work with. Doesn't matter what happens, and let them do and let them benefit by it. If you steal, we object. If you come and do deliberate damage, we take action. If it's something you have done, we invite you to join us to develop more. There are people in your audience today, I think, and other times, that they are working full-time as employees of the Keshe Foundation in research centers of the Keshe Foundation. We own the Keshe research centers. We bought the companies, they work full-time. We don't come to public and say where they are. And we encourage them to go out and develop new technologies to come out of the Keshe Foundation. And these gradually become center of excellence. Some of you here, you know, you're already full-time employees of the Keshe Foundation. We don't do what we used to do 3-4 years ago to put our people in target line and get their family. No, we invest in the background, we work in the background. A few people you see in public, the rest are well protected and they work full time.
I don't want to touch with everything, but I want to help people. That's it. I don't need anything.
Yeah, each one of us does different things, different ways. But essentially, Keshe Foundation, we open our pattern for people to benefit by it. We are not worried about how they do it, as long as it's done correct, ethically, and legally, and brings you income and whatever. That's what is there. We encourage people to make cancer. We encourage people to make maglev systems. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people around the world, thousands who live there, make their living, their food, they feed their children with gas production and pens and things like this. I just got to know in the past few weeks, maybe 20, 30 of them in different countries because of one single move. A guy who lives in Denmark runs, the only income he has is selling maglevs. He sells 3-4 maglevs a month. Guy in Turkey has made his living. That's the only income he has.
Hello, Mr. Keshe. This is Micah Green from Canada. I was wondering, is the Arizona going to be a distribution facility for North America kind of thing as well, for all the products?
We have not decided on that one. You've got to realize Arizona has become the center for many of the things of the Keshe Foundation. We have moved the Mark Ray from LA, what you call California, to Arizona. And this will bring a lot of things for us. And plus, anything we do in US, Arizona, we work directly with John. We decide on how it goes, what goes to Markway, what stays out of Markway, and what we produce outside Markway but sold to Markway. It all will be decided by John. And we'll see how it takes shape. But essentially, whatever we do in the US in the coming months, I'm sure John will put it in public the way it goes. We work with one voice with John, and it's the way it takes shape the same. We work the same way with Klaus in Vienna as a headquarters of the Keshe Foundation worldwide. We work the same way with Yusuf in Tehran. We work the same way with Anglin in China. And you will hear new developments with Brazil in a very short time, and the same with Alex in Nigeria. All these are people we work, we trust, and we live through our ethos with. And collectively we'll decide.
Thank you very much. What about Mexico? Will that be a distribution center as well? I'm just trying to.
Mexico is not my property anymore. It's not part of the Keshe Foundation. Mexico was moved by Arman to become assets of Mark Ray, and Mark Ray is a public limited company in public shareholding. And I cannot comment on Mexico under Mark Ray, but Mexico as a whole as Keshe Foundation will go under the Mark Ray, but the work of the Mark Ray, and that decision of John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, indeed.
Mr. Keshe, have you got any comments on the situation in Canada?
Wish you good luck. I like what you're doing. It looks beautiful what is happening, what's taking shape. But we have to see how they try to break you up.
Thank you.
I heard the French have learned from you, and they started a bigger one in France with the French flavor this weekend. Let's see how it goes. In Europe, we see many nations are dropping off, relaxing, changing, and creating new dilemmas. And for example, in Austria, it's becoming very, very funny the way it is. Nobody knows what to do. They announced that vaccination becomes compulsory, but as of yesterday, all the shops and everywhere is open as long as you got a PC test if you want to go to restaurant from next week. And why do you need to get an injection to put your life in danger when you just need to go for a PC test, which government pays for it? And what's the use of vaccination? We'll see. And we saw England has relaxed it now. The quarantine has been taken away in England. We see other changes, movement. It's lost gradually by next year, we hope this vaccination business making money for world presidents will be over and putting countries under debt. The only people who benefited by this mayhem were Rothschilds, where they were lending money to all of them, underwriting all their debts. And now you took a holiday, you were forced to stay home, your system didn't work, your vaccination you received, your children and grandchildren for the next 60 years will pay the interest and the main part to the Rothschild family. That's all it was. But this time, all the nations are paying for it. Loss of revenue, taxation, and the rest. It was just a coup d'etat, and it happened, and it took the ransom.
Hi, Mr. Keshe. Could you explain the science behind the migraine ice cap? I've ordered one for a friend and I want to be able to teach them how it works. Thank you. Out of the Keshe Foundation store, the migraine headache ice cap.
What are you talking about?
In the Keshe store, you have a product.
Yeah.
It's called the migraine ice cap.
Yeah.
Could you explain the science behind it for me so I can teach my friend?
You tell me what you understand from it.
I've asked for the instructions for it, but I haven't received them yet. I'm still waiting on the product. I think it's GANs related for sure, but I think it's going to balance their emotions and their soul. That's all I can think of at the moment.
It is, these are trial units which are put out. And we try to see, it came on the back of the, what we call the glasses and other things, which most of the products have been sent out. We look at the, what we call testimonials of it, and we use it for the next generation of the products. It's mainly to do with emotion and vision.
Will the results be permanent once they use the cap for a period of time?
It should be.
Thank you.
It depends if you need it.
Well, thank you for that very enlightening comments on the world situation, especially in the Ukraine. Most of us didn't know any of the background there that you explained. We read the headlines and think we're understanding, but there's a lot more that's been kept from us. Thank you, Mr. Keshe.
This is a problem when you've been a long time on this planet, you know too much. It's the wisdom of the age, as we call it. Thank you very much. I was supposed to be here just to keep the session open. I wasn't supposed to participate.
Well, that was very nice for him to. He was only supposed to be an operator today. But thank you, Mr. Keshe. Alex, I know you've probably been sitting there for a moment or two. I don't know what you'd like to, how you'd like to proceed at this point.
Hi, Mark. I don't know that the opening act should follow the feature.
Yes, Mr. Keshe is a hard act to follow, but I think we will be following, and we will hear him speak through us, and we will imitate a lot of his work. I don't mind using the word copy either, because I think the universe does do a lot of copying, even the creator, when he said he made the man in the image of himself, and the way the neutron divides and so on and so forth. There's a lot of replication, let's say, throughout the universe.
John, are you staying on permanently to the end that I can switch over?
I'm here.
And would you stay on if I switch off? Because if I end, the whole session finishes. I have to hand the hosting to you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keshe.
Thank you very much.
Disclaimer. The information and education material contained herein is meant to promote the general understanding and dialogue of GAN's processing. Such information is not meant or intended to serve as a substitute for a healthcare professional's clinical training, experience, or judgment. For patients and individuals, such information is not to be a substitute for professional medical, therapeutic, or healthcare advice or counseling. For medical issues or concerns, including decisions about medications and other treatments, readers, viewers, listeners should always consult their physician or, in serious cases, seek immediate assistance from emergency personnel. Prescription information, procedures, and use of medical devices information should be undertaken only by properly trained and certified medical personnel. We specifically disclaim any warranties, express or implied, including implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. Such information is provided, as is, and is believed to be accurate at the time of its publishing, but it is the viewer's job to evaluate the accuracy of any information found in this presentation. Every case presented is of their own experience, applied by themselves for themselves, and it applies to their case only. Every person experiencing health problems should seek professional medical advice and consult their course of treatment with a doctor. The processes of plasma balancing described herein are a natural process which supports the body but does not replace medical advice or therapies one is already subject to.